Welcome to Friday's Lunch and Learn. So we're just here for half an hour, and it is a lunch and learn. It's informal, so please do eat your lunch if you've got it with you, if you're lucky enough to have some lunch. Just for anybody that hasn't been to any of our lunch and learns before, excuse me, just to give you a bit of context as to what we're about. The subjects for our lunch and learn are really varied and change with every lunch and learn that we do. Hi, Angela. And we'll signpost you at the end again to give us some feedback. And also, if anyone's interested in presenting at one of our lunch and learn sessions, we're really happy and open to hear from you. So anybody that works and or volunteers in health and care, that's who this is for. So our focus tends to be primarily on North Cumbria, but obviously we can share with experiences from outside as well. So that's that. Just some protocols for today's session. So I know quite a lot of you are eating your lunch, so feel free to keep your cameras off. If you want to keep the camera on for the whole session, that's fine. Just bear in mind that we are recording this session for other people to see, so there might just be a picture of you on the recording, but that's absolutely fine. But yes, please do keep your mute on. Because it's quite a short session, we don't tend to invite commentary during the presentation, but hopefully we'll have a bit of time for people to comment or ask questions at the end of the presentation. But do use the chat for contributions, and I can pick some questions up at the end if there are any questions as we go along. Perhaps Amy, if you wouldn't mind just gathering those, and we'll pick them up at the end. And then the rest are all fairly straightforward. So we're going to move on to compassionate leadership now. And when I was pulling together the slides for this session, it was really tricky because there is so much that we can talk about when it comes to compassionate leadership. And so the aim of this for me, in terms of my motivation of what I'm sharing with you today, I suppose is to absolutely give you an evidence base behind why compassionate leadership isn't just a nice to have, but also to inspire you to remember you're not in this alone, and actually it is the right thing to do. And sometimes we can become a bit weary, can't we, depending on the types of environments that we work in, that role modeling compassionate leadership is the right thing to do. But it is the right thing to do, and hopefully these few slides this afternoon will re-inspire you and reignite you around your practice and what you role model out to others. So I wanted to start by building on the foundations of compassionate leadership with an understanding of what staff engagement is, because staff engagement is a term that's used a lot, isn't it? And there's various definitions in psychology around this. And I think sometimes staff engagement is often thought of as communicating with staff in an effective way, sending staff surveys, having listening events, the type of things that comms teams do. Not that, that's not helpful, but it's more than that. It's much more than that. And if we're truly engaging with staff, and that includes ourselves as well as staff, these are the types of things that we'll be achieving. So that psychological engagement, that intrinsic sort of engagement and motivation, true staff engagement will help people to feel proactive and feel they can get on and do stuff. It will fill people with enthusiasm and initiative, perhaps not every minute of every day, but generally speaking. It will create a sense of organisational citizenship and feeling really committed to your cause and what you're doing. And you will be involved, at least in part, in decision making. So there'll be a spirit of collective leadership around it, not just being hierarchical, but actually the people who are contributing are the people that know what's going on, and they're helping with that decision making. Um, and there's a positive representation of the organisation to outsiders, and I've put there advocacy. Advocacy is by far and away the most important element of for example, an NHS staff survey or any other types of surveys you might do in health and care. When you look at and gauge what people are saying about whether or not they would recommend your service as a place to work, and more importantly, even as a place to receive care, that's your indicator. That's your indicator straight away of how engaged staff are. And we've got that data. We've definitely got that data in the NHS. It's probably a bit trickier in other sectors, but I know in social care there are definitely cultural surveys and activities that are going on in North Cumbria. And those are the things to look at: advocacy. To what degree would I advocate for the service that I work in? And what are other people saying? So there should be some boxes on the next slide. It's actually gone a bit squiffy, that one too. Definitely some technical problems going on today, but I'll talk around this. This is the most important thing, just to sort of for me to be able to say why there is a link between engagement and performance, and this feeds into that. It's not just a nice to have. So we know there is a growing body of evidence around the link between how engaged staff are and what the output is, what the end goal is. And that's not just in health and care, that's outside of health and care. In fact, there's more evidence outside of health and care, but that is growing for us. So in terms of client satisfaction and sort of service settings, in business settings, there are clear links between how engaged staff are and profit, how customer satisfaction, all of those sorts of things. And there's some references there if you want to follow that through. Linking to performance outcomes. Backer has a raft of evidence there. And I suppose the two that we're going to focus on for this short session is the link to safe working and to burnout, and the correlation between those. So I suppose when you think about staff engagement, burnout's at the kind of opposite, the sort of the negative end of the spectrum in terms of staff engagement, and little or no engagement can contribute to burnout. And this is more than just being hacked off, although that's not, that'll have an effect too. We may not want to feel that way, but we do. And the extension of this is organizational or even system trauma. Everything that an organization is seeped in, everything it's experienced will have an effect. So if you think of an organization as a living organism, it's reacting and responding to its surroundings. So it's doing that collectively, but it's also doing that individually. And health and care's challenging at the best of times, isn't it? As well as being very rewarding. But it's no wonder burnout's often, on the horizon for people. And it's the people around us that quite often are the only thing that will make a difference in that. And so, burnout can lend itself to these things. There's this indifference or a distant attitude to work. Obviously there's exhaustion and that sort of depletion, and that almost kind of empathy and compassion can almost become white noise, because you've got that fatigue around it, and this a funny word, which is inefficacy. But if we think of that in terms of a lack of power to produce a desired effect, and the fact that you feel disempowered, you want to do a good job but you're feeling disempowered, you can see how it feeds into outcomes and ultimately performance and outcomes for patients and service users. So the more positive the experience of staff, the better the outcome for service users, and that's a fact. and the stuff at the top, those 4 bullet points at the top, are all related to the outcome, below. So, and some of it's quite I suppose it's almost like it can be regarded as the nice to have stuff, well structured appraisals. Now, for that, I would go wider than that, and I would think about one to ones, trying to have regular one to ones with staff. But any of those touch points where you're doing reflective practice and you're connecting with your staff, and appraisals as well. Everything that goes towards working in a well structured team, having supportive leadership, and what goes with that in terms of feeling valued, respected, and having the freedom to innovate and to make changes and be involved in decision making. All that stuff are predictors of patient service user satisfaction and turnover and absenteeism we would expect, wouldn't we? But patient mortality. So, and if you haven't heard this before, this is quite sort of shocking, I suppose, in the sense that quite often we'll say, well, we feel disgruntled, or we've got conflict in the team, but it isn't. But we don't let it affect the patients. We don't let it affect the service users, the people that we serve. Well, I'm here to tell you that it does, whether you want it to or not. So we know for a fact that, and I'm talking health here, not, but there is similar evidence in social care as well. But the National NHS Staff Survey gives us a very strong correlation between those trusts that have the lowest staff engagement scores have the highest mortality rates, and vice versa. So if you think about it relative to that, then this stuff at the top they're not nice to haves. They are actually imperative to us, having a good outcome for service users. It's not just about our technical ability. It's about how we go about doing our job as well. Moving on to the next slide. And if we think back to that inefficacy and the burnout, and think about our will and our want to believe that we can do stuff, all of this ties into it. So, and as it says there, human beings, we've got this kind of mind, heart, and will, and in combinations, these three really serve human success and failure. And so, what's going on internally for us? It, it's really important to actually how we present. So all of our beliefs, all of the things that we think and feel, and some of that you could come from childhood experiences. Everything that we're marinated in has an effect on what we do and how we behave. And we might not be able to start going back to our childhood experiences and things that have happened to us in the past, but certainly what we are experiencing in terms of our work environment will have a play on this as well. So, what's compassionate leadership then? And I would invite you to put into the chat, if you'd like to, what you believe compassionate leadership is, because there are different definitions. I'm playing to the definition that kind of sits around health and care, and am informed a lot by the King's Fund, and what they talk about in health and care around compassionate leadership. But yeah, so the definition we've got there is a sensitivity to suffering in self and others with a commitment to try and alleviate and prevent it. And we can experience compassion in different ways. We can feel compassion for other people. We can experience compassion from others. And, there's also the compassion that we can direct towards ourselves. And self-compassion is so important for our resilience. We're not going to touch on that today, but that's in the mix as well, isn't it? And empathy is vital in this. And here's empathy on its own has its own evidence base around what it can achieve, and a recent study which is referenced there shows these benefits. And if we are able to be empathetic, we're much more likely to create environments where we are innovative, where people feel more engaged. Retention, again, is a no-brainer. And people feel that, that inclusivity bit, people feel like they can turn up and be themselves and be recognized for the strengths and individuality that they bring, irrespective of the color of your skin, your race, your sexuality, and all of those sorts of things, and your job role as well. And work-life balance, I think, is excuse me, probably for me the most important one around. If you have a leader who is behaving in an empathetic way, the evidence shows that people feel that they can attend to their work-life balance so much more easily, and they can manage what's going on inside and outside of work. So, how do compassionate leaders behave? They empathize with their colleagues and seek to understand the challenges that they face. They're committed to supporting others to cope with and respond, successfully to work challenges. They're focused on enabling those that they lead to be effective, and thrive in their work, as opposed to being directive and constantly tell. In other words, you're creating the right conditions. And compassionate leaders don't have all the answers. It's not about telling people what to do. It's about engaging with people that they work with and having that kind of shared approach to problem solving. So these are the four things that Michael West talks about. Professor Michael West, and again, if you look at the King's Fund or you just Google Michael West, you'll get lots of really interesting data and information around compassionate leadership. Michael West invented the NHS staff survey, so is very adept at making correlations between how people feel and patient and service user outcomes. And I suppose, in case you were thinking, well, that's all well and good, but as a team leader, I'm struggling to fight the system and unblock some real challenges. Haven't got the money, haven't got the staff. I'm battling with an organisational or systemic culture that doesn't fit with my own values all of the time, or what I want to do and how I want to be. Well, we can't solve everything, can we? But research suggests that it's the local action in teams or in departments that where we work, where we make the most change. So they do say, for example, that people don't leave organizations, they leave their managers, and I think sometimes that can be true, but we can create an environment in our own bit of an organization, be that a team or a department or a function or a service, and focus on that bit, and that will start to really make a difference, irrespective of what's going on in the wider and the bigger environment. So you may have seen this slide or something similar to this slide before, but we couldn't talk about compassionate leadership without talking about psychological safety. So for leaders to be compassionate, it must also be inclusive. Inclusive leadership goes hand in hand with compassionate leadership, and but for everyone to feel heard, for everyone to be celebrated for their difference, psychological safety has to exist. Um, and it's the key to having a team that trusts and respects each other. And it means that you can be yourself, you can be authentic, know that you won't be blamed for making mistakes. You can speak up, you can say no, you can ask questions, you can give ideas, all those sorts of things. You can argue, but in a healthy way. Taking risks doesn't mean being careless or reckless. It means having the permission to make improvements and be innovative. And it's important because people who feel psychologically safe tend to be more innovative anyway. You learn from your mistakes because you can talk about them and you're not keeping them under wraps. And you're motivated to improve your own team because you feel like you've got some power within the team to do that. And this is the most complicated slide we've got, so don't worry. But and I'll talk you through it. But psychological safety again can be seen as a soft touch along with compassionate leadership. And there's some myths that I think must be addressed to ensure that people see the value of compassionate leadership in terms of, people not seeing it as soft. So, people could well say, well, compassionate leadership means that there might be a loss of commitment to purpose and high quality performance. Tough performance management's out the window because those sorts of conversations won't be allowed or be labeled as bullying. We're always taking the easy consensus way forward rather than putting patients and service users and communities first, and not be able to challenge the status quo. But that's not true, because as long as you've got this commitment to excellence and high quality care, um, you will still be able to performance manage, and you will still be able to work towards performance indicators, and challenge yourselves to be ambitious, and do a really good job. If I mean, you can see here, as if psychological safety is high, but you don't have that commitment to excellence and high quality care, yeah, you can be in a comfort zone where people are feeling too relaxed. You're almost too forgiving of each other when you don't reach targets or whatever. But if you've got high psychological safety and high commitment to excellence and high quality care, you've got that top right hand box there, which is your learning zone. It's your high performing zone. So as long as you've got the two, psychological safety is the way to go. It's the right thing to do. So it's a really quick presentation, obviously, as part of this lunch and learn, but I wanted to try and kind of pull it together to say, okay, so what do we do? We might know what compassionate leadership is, but what do we actually do? And if you don't remember anything else, it's remembering this stuff. It's that listening with an open mind, listening with curiosity. Michael West would say, listen with fascination, but I think it's just showing that you're listening, and that you're not just listening, ready to jump in with your response. So, and you're halfway there already. Showing empathy, we've talked about already, so that you can then come to a mutual understanding of, okay, well, where are we? What needs to happen? What do we need to do? How can I support you? Which in turn will support the team and the organisation. Creating the conditions for people to feel psychologically safe and for people to flourish is so important. And we've talked about those with psychological safety. It's that definition of madness, isn't it? Which is, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. What do you need to change? What needs to change in the team? What do you need to be brave about to air and to talk about in order to start to create or embody psychological safety? And finally, this is the last slide, is self is so important in this. We can be so critical of others, and rightly so. We can be frustrated by, well, I'm trying to do my best, but then I look at people around me, they might be more senior than me or whatever, or peers, and they're not actually role modeling this compassionate leadership stuff, so why should I? But everything you say and everything you do makes a difference, whether you like it or not. And so if you're able to say to yourself at the end of every day, what's it like to be on the receiving end of me, then you're obviously raising your own self-awareness around how you lead and your behaviours. So one last gratuitous plug, and this is a programme that is being sponsored by CLIC but is being run by the University of Cumbria. It's a 20 credit level 7 master's level module in leadership through transformational learning. And again, there is a strong body of evidence to show that the best leaders are the ones that are the most self-aware, that can transform their own practice through really strong self-awareness, which in turn obviously lends itself to this subject matter really well. So all of the details are there. We'll send the slides out as well, but you can also look on the CLIC website to see if this is something that you might be interested in. Anyone that works in health and care, again, in North Cumbria, is able to apply to this programme. There's an application process. Fab. Thanks, Amy. She's just put the link there in the chat. So do have a look at that and cascade that. There's still a bit of time yet to apply for that if you want to. So I'm going to pull the slides down. But I'll put this one up before I do that, which is to click on the link, or again, I'm assuming we'll have that in the chat there to please do give your feedback. We've been running our lunch and learns now for quite a while, but we're always open to feedback, and we're absolutely up for you coming to us and saying, this, what about this is a great idea for a lunch and learn. It's very rarely us in CLIC or the library service that deliver these lunch and learns. I've come on today as this is compassionate leadership is a passion of mine, but quite often we'll have guest speakers. So yeah, please do get in touch. So I think we're literally dead on 1:30 now. So so we'll end the session there. But thank you for coming along and participating today. Tell your friends, you know, because compassionate leadership is so important. And we are CLIC are running a compassionate leadership campaign at the moment. So look out on our social media and on our website for more resources. So because there's quite a lot of stuff around at the moment. Amy's just popped into there the next lunch and learn, which is managing primary headache diagnosis to treatment, and that's a fantastic person called Siobhan, who's a headache nurse consultant, but she's so much more than that as well. She's really passionate about her subject matters, so that'll be the next one. So thanks everybody, and see you again soon.